Hi there. I have a guest. It's Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hello, Martin. Thanks for having me.
You've flown a long way to come here from Sydney, actually? Or is it a suburb? Or
I'm actually about 90 minutes south of Sydney in a coastal regional area called Wollongong.
Okay, and actually within Sydney, they still call they have their own city names, right? Like Bondi seems to be a...
That's right, that's another suburb.
Yeah.
And then, so, there's many suburbs within Sydney. There'd be a couple of hundred, I suppose, within Sydney. But where I am in Wollongong is considered outside of Sydney. There's a big national park, the Royal National Park, which breaks Sydney up from the Illawarra.
So you have a guide. If you ever come to Australia and do
Agile, when you go to Australia, not if. I'm expecting that everyone watching this is putting Australia on their list.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to be working on this, making you go to Australia. But at the same time, why should you watch this? Not only because Nick took a long way come here, not because we don't have proper pants on. We're going to be talking about Agile, about the products that you do in the Atlassian business. Maybe you may ask me some questions if you want. It's most likely not going to be a super quick video, as there's no special one message goal that we want to convey. I hope it's going to be interesting for you. Nick is definitely an interesting guy that you want to catch up with on Twitter, which will be...
At NJM on Twitter.
NJM.
NJM.
That's kind of... is it because you worked at Twitter that you have this 3-letter handle? Or
I was fortunate enough to get that 3-letter handle.
Would they give you a list of free 3-handle letters there?
Absolutely not.
No, that's so you had to try out? Or?
Nicholas James Muldoon.
Yeah.
And becoming an employee, there was an unused handle that wasn't taken, and I could use that one. So cool. I switched.
Yeah, not bad. Cool. NJM, that's easy. And what are you doing?
What am I doing? I am raising a family. I am renovating a house and building a property, and I am building a software business on the back of the Atlassian marketplace. They're the 3 things that I spend my time doing these days.
So what have you been doing in the past, which also was like kind of Atlassian, Twitter, and
I've been in the Atlassian space since 2007. I joined Atlassian in 2007, and I spent several years there. I spent 5.5 years at Atlassian, and my main role there was as product manager for Greenhopper for Jira Agile. And I went to San Francisco with Atlassian in 2011, and in late 2012 I was invited to join Twitter and help Twitter scale their product and engineering organization. And that was really a coaching role. It was to help the leaders across the organization and the product and engineering managers think about how they can grow the business more effectively. And growth there, we talked earlier about vanity metrics. One of the vanity metrics of that particular business was the number of people that we added. We added over 1,000 engineers in the first 12 months that I was at Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And so it was this crazy ride to try and bring people on board and train them and keep the culture going and make sure that we were all heading in the same direction.
Twitter never really took off in Germany as it did in America or other countries.
Yeah. Twitter was very hit and miss, right? It certainly hasn't taken off in Australia.
Okay.
There's a subset of the population in Australia that's...
Well, still, McKenna Brooks only tweets.
He only tweets.
Since 6 months or so, he automatically posts his tweets to his Facebook profile.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of a new innovation that he kind of adopted. And when I'm watching this, I do see that the interaction that he gets is much higher on Facebook. Than on Twitter. And still he's keeping on tweeting, and it's kind of, he probably doesn't care if anyone interacts with him or not. He just posts his stuff.
Yeah, well, I think what we found with Twitter was that it sort of pains me to say this, but the audience was split along demographic lines. We found that the Twitter audience were generally more savvy, better educated. They spent more money. They earned more money. If we looked at the Twitter audience in Indonesia, for instance, the Twitter audience in Indonesia, if you were Indonesian, you might have 3 mobile phones and a Twitter account for each mobile phone. One mobile phone was your family. You had your family Twitter account. One mobile phone was your work. You had your work account. And one mobile phone was like this fantasy other circle of friends account. So it's interesting to see. In Germany, for instance, no one in Germany that uses Twitter uses their real name. Whereas in America or Australia, people that use Twitter do use their real name. So it was interesting to see the different cultural biases that were teased out through this product.
What is still unique to Twitter, in my opinion, is it's this one open platform that whenever someone releases a tweet, it's available to everyone.
That's right.
And Facebook is still this kind of closed, creepy thing.
What are the privacy settings?
So you never know if someone posted something, because they can have so many different rights management circle.
That's right. The circle was the Google Plus piece.
Yeah.
So in Google Plus, you had that similar thing where you
had
so much control over the
circle. That
right.
I was referring to the circle. I know it's groups, or how does Facebook call that? However, you can say who should get this specific post. And it's something that actually I don't get it, why you can't search Facebook the way you can search Twitter. So it's very easy for me to find every single bit that has been released in the last 50 seconds around this soccer club or whatever. And it's impossible on Facebook.
That's the way that the platform's designed, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to watch the platforms evolve. If you look at one of the big developments over the past 2 years, it's the direct messaging platforms. The Snapchat, Snapchat started out as a one-to-one and then a one-to-a-few, but this ephemeral sort of conversation.
And it still has this notion of everything that you post is going to vanish.
It's going to disappear.
Yeah.
But they've gone beyond that, because they see that if they keep that... So a lot of these... If you look at Silicon Valley, it's really interesting, because if you want to get VC money in Silicon Valley, you have to go big. You have to go real big, right? Mm-hmm. No one's interested in a company that's going to make $50 million or $100 million. They're interested in companies that are going to make tens of billions of dollars, right? That's the game that they play. And so if you're in the social space...
And you don't have a lot of time, right?
You don't have a lot of time.
I'm still astonished that this Slack company is getting so much traction for their single group chat thing that is slick, but that's about it. And if you look at Atlassian, the whole company, which includes HipChat, which is in my opinion on eye level, maybe not as good on the UX part, but much better on integrations and this stuff. So Atlassian not only has HipChat, but also like much bigger products like Confluence and Jira, and still the valuation that you see for Atlassian it's the same.
But keep in mind, one of them is a private market valuation, and one of them is the public market valuation. Yeah. And what we've seen over the last 3 years in Silicon Valley is that private market valuations have exceeded the public market valuations in many cases, right?
Which is ridiculous, isn't it?
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you look at the Airbnbs and the Ubers, they have private market valuations that they're eye-watering, right? Uber's private market valuation is north of $60 billion. They've lost over $1.2 billion in the first half of this year. So it completely defies gravity. Now, you can't value the company based on any normal metrics like financial measures. You just can't value them based on that, because if you're looking at it on a financial metric, it's worth nothing. It's losing more money. It just consumes money. It's a loss-making exercise.
Yeah, it's a strategic valuation, more or less. I also when I look at Uber, and by the way, we should maybe say that, or I should have said that in the very beginning. Nick's gonna do our keynote at Tools for Agile Teams. At least Civic Media's biggest conference in a year. I wasn't involved in the organization, so I don't know whether we're going to have 150 or 200 people.
I can tell you. I know the answer to these
you know the
questions.
answer, okay.
Tomorrow evening, we're going to have about 140 attendees.
Okay.
70% of the registered people are going for both days, and on Friday, you'll have in excess of 200.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So there you go. So I'm on it, Martin. Don't worry.
This stuff. And I'm only going to be a visitor and follow around and try to entertain people. And you're going to do the keynote, but it's not going to be Uber or Airbnb.
Or Twitter or Facebook or any of that stuff.
One question about this macro internet things. Are you still holding Twitter shares? Would you recommend that? Or is it rather a put? Or can't you answer?
Well, no. Okay, so I'm not holding Twitter shares today, and in fact, I recently sold down my Atlassian shares. I still hold Atlassian shares today, but that was purely for the reason that I was trading shares for property.
Yeah.
So I've got part of the reason.
And that's incredibly expensive in Australia, right?
No, it's
don't they have
property
things?
Property in and around Sydney is more expensive than San Francisco. And that boggles the mind, right? Yeah. When you've got cashed up tech people in San Francisco. But yeah, so my wife and I decided to move the family back to Australia because we have two young kids. And so we wanted to be closer to family.
Coming back to traveling, sorry for interrupting. Australia is actually pretty similar to Germany, while even California is not. Like if you're in the US, it's just a different place.
Yeah.
Like the houses seem to have walls this thick, while in Germany it's rather this way.
Yeah.
And it's Australia was.
I made the comment this morning. I was in the taxi from the airport, and I said, "Entschuldigung, Deutschland is schön," and the taxi driver looks at me and he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, because it's just the rolling hills and it's just beautiful and don't get me wrong, like America is beautiful too, but where we lived in Silicon Valley in the center of the city, it's nothing like what you see here.
If you come from San Francisco Airport and you go either direction, let's say you go downtown San Francisco to go to Twitter head office. No one, not even the biggest lover of this area will tell you that the hills look nice. Everything's burned, everything's dried up. There is no water to.
They've been in a big drought.
It's pretty astonishing. Like this is the center of the internet, and now this is the grass.
It's great, right? Like I had this conversation in would have been 2014, and we were talking about some business continuity planning at Twitter, and at that point in time, the level of the dams in and around Silicon Valley, in some of the dams it was as low as 30%, and so I asked the question. What, as part of our business continuity plan, what's our plan in the event that the water dries up? And I was basically like, the water's not going to dry up. And I'm like, okay, well, sure. But, you're at 30%. Like, should we be starting to talk about contingency plans in the events that we don't have water to cool our data centers? Or we don't have drinking water in our offices? Like, are we going to have to deal with this? And luckily, of course, it starts to rain and the cycle turns and all that sort of stuff. But it's interesting that we're in this kind of world today, not just in California, because I think we have environmental problems all over the world where we have to start thinking about key things like water availability for our businesses. Now,
and it's a big business, water
sure,
itself. Already.
You have a data center. In your data center, depending on the cooling method that you use, you might be using water as a cooling method. So what's the availability and all that sort of stuff. So these are things that we have to take into account in business today that we just didn't have to consider 10, 15 years ago.
I just listened to an audiobook called Conscious Capitalism by the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. He's talking to this environmental things. It's actually,
You can make money.
Hope giving, in my opinion. It's not a devastating picture that he makes, but it's still a very comprehensive economic and ecology including thing. I loved it a lot. I think it's one of the best audiobooks I listened to.
What are some of the other books that you've read recently that you enjoyed?
So
Conscious Capitalism.
Conscious Capitalism
one that
is
people gotta
taking
read.
up the first two spots. It's really, really good.
What are the top three? Conscious Capitalism and Conscious Capitalism. Okay.
It was the most recent. This is most likely going to be a very agile group still watching this video. So Team of Teams is a very good audiobook in my opinion. Turn the Ship Around.
David Marquette. We had him come by Twitter.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay. Give a talk, or did he join Twitter?
No, he did
He gave a talk.
a workshop, 1 day workshop for a number of the engineering managers.
Yeah. So those are very pragmatic and good books if you want to take out, there are a lot of books, business books that are like a popcorn bag. You can pick out things and think, oh, that's awesome. And it tastes awesome. And those two are Team of Teams and Turn the Ship Around are things that you can, even if your environment is not, your CEO didn't get Scrum and Kanban yet, you can still pick out a lot of popcorns and toss them at your teams and have a lot of value coming out of that, I think. There's a list. I've a long...
What was the Ben Horowitz book?
I don't know a Ben Horowitz book.
Ben Horowitz wrote a book. Can't think of the name of it. But the Ben Horowitz's book. So Ben Horowitz is the Horowitz part of Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, the venture capital firm.
No.
And he did work with Mark Andreessen at Netscape, and then Opsware, I think it was, and you read that book and it was good? His book, that book is really interesting. You're talking
but you don't
about
know
popcorn. I can't think of it. It's a 12-month ago read, and I got 2 kids under the age. I don't get a lot of time to read, Martin.
I have to commute 18 minutes, and it's when I listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
So just to finish that, and as it has been a long postponed task for me to do that. So, and I've been asked by people, please tell me which audiobooks you're listening to. So this is the answer, also for German languages. So look on Die Arbeit from Lars Vollmer is a German one. Conscious Capitalism, I named already. Everything from Dan Ariely is awesome. He's a behavioral economist and really good science about how people behave. Originals from Adam Grant, it's kind of shallow but really good. What I loved a lot is Give and Take from Adam Grant. This is mind-breaking in my opinion.
Give and take.
Yeah, the givers are both the doormats and the kings of performance. If you meet people that are really, really successful, they are almost always givers. They give, and then you have takers and matchers, and takers always try to take, and matchers try to match. And the give and take philosophy, or if I boil it down to a sentence, I would say you should be a giver, and you should be always giving to people, and you should also be taking if you need something but you don't balance that out. If you meet someone who is a taker or a matcher, you don't want to become a doormat. A doormat means that you keep on giving and he's keep on taking. So if you meet a matcher or a taker, you turn for this guy or this woman, you turn into a matcher. So you keep your balance with this guy because you understand that he's going to suck out stuff from you.
Yeah.
But for everyone else, you keep on being a giver. And it's a very simple concept that makes you so much a better person, in my opinion. Because from that point on, you can give to everyone. And let's be honest, people who are in tech today, they can give. They have plenty of money, plenty of knowledge, plenty of emotional capacity in most opinions, and so they are in a position where they can give, and still some don't because they may think it's tactically wrong or whatever, And it's a very simple concept to say, look, where do you want to be scarce with giving, and where can you give in abundance? And so give and take from Adam Grant is awesome. I have to scroll a lot because my kids keep on buying audiobooks, and you don't want to listen to Sams or Overture in Panama. Under new management, if you are very new and still in a traditional model, that's good. Team of Teams, I said already. Flourish is good from Martin Seligman. It's about positive psychology. Contagious from Jonah Berger. Do you know that?
No.
That should be in the top 3. It's a marketing book. How to make things contagious. He has a steps, six story. So Contagious is a very, very good book. David and Goliath is awesome.
So I'll give you the Ben Horowitz one. The Ben Horowitz one is The Hard Thing About Hard things.
Ah, okay. Never heard of that. The hard thing about hard things, and that is an interesting read. I would drag it down, but now I have it on a recording.
You have it on a recording. And one of the other ones that I read recently, especially if you're in a maybe more chaotic environment, is a book by Christina Woodkey, which is Radical Focus.
Oh, okay.
And that's a book that I've been giving to the startups that I work with that don't necessarily have goals and plans and perhaps even a strategy and a vision in place. And that's a book that really helps in that scenario as well.
Cool. What are you going to talk about during Tools for Agile Teams in your keynote?
In the keynote, I'm going to focus on what it means to have agility. I think there is too much emphasis these days on this process, that practice, this tool, and a lot of the people that are selling, and they are selling, they're in it to make money for themselves and grow their tribe. And so if I think of an example of that, or a couple of examples of that, I get frustrated when I hear people bang on and on about SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework, as like
less and all this.
And the only way to scale is with SAFe, and then it's a really rigid it's a framework. Like Scrum is a framework, you pick and choose, but the way that it's often sold, not necessarily by Dean, but by other people, is that this is a framework, you take the framework, you implement the framework, and you get faster, you get more quality and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, hang on, the benefits of Agile are not faster and more quality. They might be nice side effects, but the benefit of Agile is that we have agility, we have adaptability. The business environment changes, and we've got the flexibility to go and change with the changing business environment. We're not locked into these long-term plans. And so when I see things like, the 12-month plan or the release train that goes for three months, I kind of... So my talk my talk on Friday, it is in fact, in the keynote, is really about what is at the heart of agility and what it is not. And so I'm very eager to see the reaction from the audience and what they take from that.
I had someone who actually sold his company, who was in the same business than we are, who, when he came to us and saw all the things that we did for employees, and said, look, this agility thing, it's just, there's a German saying, alter Wein in neuen Schläuchen, which means like old wine in new bottles. So you just bottle up the old stuff and it looks nicer now. And it's a big misconception that people still think in their box and think that this Scrum thing and this Kanban thing can kind of perform better in their box. But actually this Scrum thing and this Kanban thing and this Agile thing wants to break out of this box and make them aware that there is another box that is much better suited for shareholders, for employees, for customers, and they can work together on stuff. And it's still like, if I talk to people, I think that they grow, at least the managers in these big companies, they grow bored after like 20 minutes, because I think he's living in this dream world. It's just like...
but I think you said the right thing there. They're managers, they're not leaders. And if you want an agile organization, you want leaders. You want people that can rally the troops and point them in that direction and get out of
in
their
Germany
way.
they call this digital transformation, which
Digital
is there's
transformation.
nothing about
There's
digital.
nothing digital.
Like,
Yeah.
hold on, let me check because I'm the only one here. Hello guys, this is still recording. Awesome. I just want to make sure we're not wasting our time here.
I wouldn't consider it a waste of time even
No.
if the camera wasn't recording.
I wouldn't either, but I still love the fact that other people can that we can share this with other
So
people.
if I look at the agile transformation that we embarked upon at Twitter,
Mhm.
we kept hitting this barrier, right? And it took me a while because I came at this problem from every way inconceivable, right? And we weren't doing a traditional agile transformation. We weren't coming from waterfall and introducing agility. We were trying to pare back abject chaos and introduce agility.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant, in our case, introducing a bit of structure and rigidity and having, let's put a process around experimentations so that every experiment that we run actually has a hypothesis,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, it was going from chaos to agility rather than this waterfall world to agility. But we kept hitting this big limiting factor. And really, at the end of the day,
was it?
It was the CEO of the company, Dick Costolo, was a manager. He wasn't a leader.
Okay.
Now, I think he probably was a leader.
Charismatic and all this stuff.
Yeah, very much so. But I think as the company went public, he lost that and he was out of his depth and he didn't know how to operate in that environment. And so the company vacillated from one thing to the next. And some might say, oh, well, that's agile because you are able to respond and adapt to the changing whims of the leader. Well, but no, because we should have had a vision and set our sights on that and been able to do something
I think it's
drive it to
the
completion.
best way to kill an agile company is put in a very mighty CEO that wrecks the whole thing. It's the best way. If you have a very good culture and a very agile way to do things, and you only have one shot to destroy it, take the CEO and give him a lot of might, and it may work.
Yeah.
I think there are companies that are resilient enough to just get away with that or circumvent him, but and it's, if you look at it from that angle, in my opinion, you often understand why a lot of traditional companies have such a hard time adopting agile methodologies, because if you introduce them top down, if you had those CEOs understand that first, it would be so much easier to do that. But
because bottom up is super easy, right? It's just the bottom up just hits all these organizational constraints.
There's a lot of structural problems that these big companies have.
That's
which
right.
starts with the CEO gets money for the performance of the shares. So the CEO has inherent systematic goals, even if they are not written down, that are short term. So he wants the stock price to be
Go up. Then how do I get the stock price to go up in the short term?
Yeah,
I
exploit
pump
the
it
company.
up.
You just exploit the company, and it's as long as this is the way their pay is determined, it's pretty difficult to really install agile throughout the whole company. And that's why Conscious Capitalism is a very, very good book, in my opinion. There's so many people who really know what's screwed up today.
About these companies.
About all of these companies. It's not only the big companies that have these problems, right? It's all the way through.